You know, last Sunday we talked about getting God's dream for your life. But today I want to say this. A dream is worthless unless you plan on doing something about it. James says it like this. A person unable to make up his mind and undecided in all he does must not think he will receive anything from the Lord. It takes a lot of wisdom to make the right choices in life, especially about God's dream for you. James here comes back and tells us, but if any of you need wisdom, you should ask God and it will be given to you. What we're going to see today is that it's going to take a balance between the dream we talked about last Sunday and our response, our decision to make that dream a reality. Some examples. God gave Noah a dream of saving the world from a flood, but Noah had to build the ark. God gave Abraham a dream of being a father of a great nation, but Abraham had to make the decision to go off into a far distant country. God gave Moses a dream of setting his people free out of Egypt, but Moses is the one who had to go in before Pharaoh, tell him what it was like. And Jesus called the disciples, and he gave them a dream of following him and following his kingdom. But they had to make the decision whether or not they were going to leave their jobs and do that. So today we're going to look at the second phase kind of briefly. It's called the decision part. And during this decision phase, there's two things you got to do. Number one, you have to invest, and I'm talking your time, I'm talking your money, reputation, energy. God is not going to give you a dream for me. This is your dream, and so it's got to involve everything you bring to the table. Invest your life. And then the second thing is you have to just let go. You know, you have to let go of the past. You have to let go of the security of the status quo. You can't move forward by being comfortable and staying there. Okay, this is a part where you stop making excuses. This is a part to where you take the plunge, you get out of the boat, you walk on water. No more procrastination. Now in America, we love decisive leaders. Unfortunately, we think a decisive leader is somebody who can make a quick decision. And that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about making the right decision. Quick decisions are easy. That's why most of them are wrong. That's why we're talking this morning about making wise decisions. And I have some recommendations, and here's number one. Pray for guidance. Before you even get started, get God's perspective on this thing. Solomon says, a man is a fool to trust himself, but those who use God's wisdom are safe. How many of you have ever made a decision that when you made it, you were absolutely sure it was right, and it turned out to be wrong? Yeah, all of us have, I bet. We get impressions, but not all the impressions we get are from God. Some of them are coming from last night's tuna fish and peanut butter sandwich. You know? That's why you need something more than gut feeling. That's why you need something that's absolutely true to base your decision on. You need God's guidance. What's the important thing here you need to ask at this point? What's God want? It's not a matter of what do I want, it's what is God really wanting from me? Now, how do I do that? We talked a little bit about it. We just spend some quiet time with God. Some alone time. You know, reading God's Word really needs to become more part of all of our lives. Take a few minutes, read it, listen what God might be saying, pray, take up your request to God, and get in that Word. Because so much of God's will for your life is already in the Bible. And so you should become best friends with that. And I kind of want to stress the quietness and the silence again. God is not going to shout at you over your iPhone. He's not going to shout at you over the TV. You have to listen very quietly. Paul would write, the peace that Christ gives is to guide us in the decisions we make. Okay, second piece of advice. Get the facts. Listen, there is no contradiction between faith and facts. Faith involves facts, and facts sometimes involve faith. There is nothing wrong with finding out all you can before you make a decision. Solomon, wise people think before they act, fools don't, and even brag about their foolishness. It's stupid to decide before knowing the facts. You know, it's an old statistic, but the Department of Labor says 90% of all businesses fail in the first year. And 90% of the 10% that survive the first year, they fail within the next 4 years. And why? People are full of uneducated enthusiasm. They know what they want to do, and they're going to do it, and they're not going to get to facts. They have great dreams, but they didn't get to facts. They didn't check it out. So what do you need to ask here? Get the facts. Where can I do it? Read the books. Attend the seminars. Find wise counsel. Do the research. Because step number 3 is ask for advice. Talk to somebody who's already been there. Talk to friends who know your strengths and weaknesses. And by the way, that's why you need to be in a small group here at the church, so people can be honest with you about your strengths and your weaknesses. Solomon says the more good advice you get, the more likely you are to win. Someone asked Henry Ford the secret of his success, and he replied, wise decisions. Well, they weren't through. They said, well, how do you learn to make wise decisions? He said, from experience. And then they still weren't through with him. He says, well, how do you get experience? He said, from making stupid decisions. Listen, it is wise to learn through stupid decisions. But we really don't have the time to do that, so we need to learn from the stupid decisions of other people. I don't have time to make all the mistakes in this lifetime, and you don't have time to make all the mistakes of this lifetime. Life's too short. That's why you can learn from the experience of others. All you have to do is just ask them. So the important takeaway here is ask for advice. And guys, asking for advice should not be such a problem with us, okay? It's pretty important. And by the way, if you can't ask for advice, you have an ego problem. And the Bible says we're foolish if we're not willing to ask for advice. All right, we're getting a little harder here, but step number 4 is calculate the cost. You know, a lot of people blow it here. A lot of people get it wrong at this point. A lot of people think that faith in and of itself can do anything. The truth is, every decision you make comes with a price tag. It might be your time, it might be your money, it might be your energy, your reputation, your talent. Solomon again comes in here. He says it's a trap for a man to dedicate something rashly and only later to consider his vows. You know, when people start to pressure you into making a decision, it is more than okay for you to say, I'll get back with you. Let me think about that. Because it's far more important to make the right decisions in life than the quick decisions. Let me tell you a secret you already know. It's always easier to get in than to get out. A bad relationship, you might get in really easy, but then you're in it, and it takes a lot of work to get out of it. Debt. Oh, it don't take me any time at all to get into debt, but it takes years to get out of debt. Even your schedule. It don't take long to fill up your entire week, but then you're working to death the entire week, and that's tough. So we really need to hear the words of Jesus here. And again, this is, I think, a comparison that we bring to this whole idea of faith. And these are the words of Jesus. He says, don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everybody would laugh at you. Or what king would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marching to him? Count the cost. Even in God's dream for you, consider that. And then ask, is it worth it? H.L. Hunt, he was one of the first billionaires we had in America many years ago. He said there's only two keys to success in life. Number one, decide what you really want, and number two, decide what you're really willing to pay for it. Number 5, prepare for the problems. I pray for guidance. I get the facts. I ask for advice. I consider the cost. And then I start checking out the problems. Murphy's Law says anything that can go wrong most likely will go wrong. There's a lot of truth to that. And so in this whole decision process, I want you to expect the best, but prepare for the worst. Expect God to lead you in this dream, but prepare for the problems that might come. Solomon says a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Wise people realize that problems most likely going to come. Things will go wrong. You can't ignore them, so you just as well prepare for them. And what's the takeoff here? You need to ask, what could go wrong? And if it does, what would I do? Now, I need to make an important point here. Yeah, I'm sure you read it in the book. But there's a world of difference between preparing for problems and solving the problems. If you have to solve all your problems before you start working on your dream, you will never start, because you never will solve all the problems. Let me give you a perfect illustration. Back in 1961, President Kennedy announced to the world that we were going to put a man on the moon in less than 10 years. Now, in 1961, it was humanly impossible to get to the moon. Most of the technology that was needed didn't even exist at that point. And some of the mathematical equations had not even been solved in 1961. But once he set the goal, he set the dream, then people started working on the problem. So don't wait and solve them. You'll never be able to do that. And then the final step is just face your fear and do it. Fear is the root of all indecision. You're afraid you're going to make a mistake. You're afraid you'll fail and embarrass yourself. Or you'll make a commitment that you can't keep. Somebody's going to laugh at you. We don't like to admit that we're afraid, so we make excuses. Moses said, I can't talk. Gideon said, I can't fight. Jeremiah said, I'm way too young. And Abraham said, I'm way too old. What's your excuse that you're using these days? God has a dream for your life, and Jesus wants to be part of your life. But some of you are saying, I don't have the time. I don't have the money and the resources. I don't have the experience or the education or the contacts, the resources. If I only had this, and this keeps changing. It's actually just fear keeping us from making a decision. Solomon says, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. God's always used imperfect people. in imperfect situations to get His will done. And if you're waiting for that perfect person or that perfect situation, I hope you have a good, comfortable seat because you're going to be there for a long time. Face the truth. Perfection, perfect conditions, is just not going to ever happen. What's the antidote for fear? It's simple. It's faith. If God is for us, who can be against us? And you just move against your fear. You do the thing you fear the most. If God has given you a dream, you just take off on your decision. And then maybe you might get to see the Red Sea opened or manna come down from heaven. You say, I don't have enough faith for this, and sometimes, well, you just have to act even without enough faith. What decisions do you need to make today? What have you been procrastinating and not wanting to do for some fear? Even if you don't have enough faith today, why not step out Monday or Tuesday and get it done, as they say? Your dreams and your decisions will determine your destiny. Can I ask you all to stand with us as we share one final song this morning?